was talking to this guy once. He had told me people don't really give a shit about you until they figure out what you can do for them. So with that being said, I figured like this would be a great place to start. I'm the oldest of 5, okay, a blended family, 7th grade. So that wasn't until about that time, 7th grade is when it became a blended family for us. But up until that point, my mom was raising me by herself. Like the majority of having a 2-parent household was not my case at all, right? And the memories that I did have of my biological pops wasn't necessarily the greatest. A lot of domestic violence situations between him and my mom. A lot of seeing, him just not being present in my life at that time. And, that was tough for me, right? It was something that I always yearned for, always something that I wanted. It wasn't something that, I wasn't able to get that father figure role being into my life that was a consistent father figure role outside of just like mentors and, coaches and so forth, a consistent father figure role not coming into my picture until 7th grade. So as I mentioned, right, like a lot of just my mom raising me by herself, a lot of her, doing the best that she could with the resources that she had, right? And it was the early years, right? Like just for that missing piece of like my pops when I would see like my homies, my teammates and so forth, kids in the school and stuff, like, their pops being there and like something that I was missing that I always yearned for, always wanted. So that was tough, man, growing through that. And something that I didn't realize really affected me until I started to get older, because for the longest it was always like, fuck my pops, like, he a deadbeat, whatever, he just not here and stuff like that. But that was just like a coping mechanism that I was using to be able to get through the pain of him actually not being there. We talk coping mechanisms and we talk outlets, right? Like for me, it was football, primarily football. I played other sports, but primarily football. I started playing the game of football when I was 6 years old. My mom put me in. Coaches took a big interest in me very early on because I was always a bigger, heavier set kid. Bro, I hated it. I hated football when I first started, right? The main reason why I did not like it had a lot to do with the fact that it was a lot of running. Coach would always tell us, take that lap. I used to hate the warm-ups. The warm-ups used to seem like they was taking forever, because the biggest thing for me as a kid, right, was that like, all right, I'm trying to get in, I'm trying to get out, right? I didn't really, the making plays and all of that stuff didn't start piecing together to me until I got older. So my biggest thing was like, I'm just trying to get in here and get out. I just knew this was somewhere that my mom was taking me after school, usually around like 5, 6 o'clock. But once you get done with school, 5, 6 o'clock, you go into practice, get your clothes on, get ready and so forth, right? So I knew we was gonna have to run those laps. We was gonna have to do those warm-ups. And then the rest of the time was just going to be idle time out there, going through different practice schemes and all that other type of stuff. But none of that stuff really gained my interest very early on. It really honestly wasn't until I got onto a team that was like, because my first couple teams that I played on weren't the greatest. Like my first year or two, up until I was like 8 years old, wasn't the greatest football teams. And then I got on some pretty good football teams and we started winning some games. So I started gaining a little bit more of an interest in it. I started getting into the habit of knowing that like, okay, this is what a winning team looks like at a young age. I got accustomed to winning. I got accustomed to winning, putting on fly jerseys and people asking me, is this kid really the age that he's supposed to be, right? So, because as I mentioned, I was so much bigger than everybody, bro. So like, I'm trying to I got to view these people asking for my birth certificates. These people want to know, like, okay, like, what school is he at and so forth and this and that. So I'm sure that was like big press for my mom to have to fill out, or my mom to have to take on when she was, signing me up for sports and so forth for that. But that was a lot of what the early years of that shit looked like. Elementary school, all the way up until freshman year of high school, I was always in some sort of trouble. Fights, getting in trouble outside of school, fighting outside of school. I'll tell y'all a funny story. I remember one time, man, one of these kids that was in the neighborhood, we were just sitting there playing around and stuff. I was real cool with his big brother. And I used to always bike over to their neighborhood and stuff because that's where a lot of our friends were. We just finished playing catch and we were playing like a football game though, like almost like it's not Six Flags Up, but all my football players, y'all know when you throw the ball up in the air and then you catch the ball over somebody's head and like you say you get mossed or whatever. I think it's 6 flags up, 3 flags up, whatever the case may be. So playing the game. I ended up being winning in the game. But at the time, like I'm talking mess, like you sorry, whatever the case may be, boom, boom. I'm driving off. I'm getting ready to go home. It's time to go home. I'm driving off on the bike, and his little bro, I must have said something that pissed him off to the point to where his little bro takes a rock and chucks it. I'm driving off, riding my bike. Little bro takes a rock, chucks it, hits me in the back of my head, puts a knot in the back of my head. So I'm driving. I'm with my buddy. His name was Randy. And I'm driving, and I'm like, I turn around, and I said, that's why I'm gonna beat you up when I get to school tomorrow. So I think maybe they thought I was kidding around. Next day, they come to school, I get to school, I'm at school waiting, I get to school early. We on the tetherball courts. Get on them, I see him, I say, hey bro, why you throw a rock in my head? Get to him, boom, 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 boom. Punch him a couple times, sock him up, I'm in trouble. And this is just an example of the little shit that I was doing back then, but like, it was, man, I've gotten in fights in classrooms, so forth, right? But just like I felt like looking back on it, bro, it was just like coping mechanisms. Like, it was just ways for me to have an outlet for so much anger I had for everything that was going on in my home life, everything that was going on, you know, just for like my pops not being there, situations with my moms, like, it was just a lot going on for me, right? And was always in trouble, man. More compass of what I'm saying, right, is that like from elementary school, middle school, like I'm always in some sort of trouble, right? And just looking for that outlet, looking for that piece that was missing. So freshman year of high school come, and this is like when shit just completely changes for me. I always tell people looking back on it, like there's always a moment in your life when you're going to know, and I'm only 25 years old, like there's so many more different moments that are gonna come, but from my personal experience, right, there's gonna come a time in your life when you're gonna know that things need to switch, like the flip needs to switch. Like you need to go from here to there to get to there, right? And my freshman year of high school is when that took place for me. I played my freshman year on varsity. I remember going into my freshman year, I had a chip on my shoulder. For me, like I wanted to get to college. That was a big thing for me. I grew up playing like college football games and stuff. Like I knew about all the different programs and stuff. Like my goal was to get to college. So, that was a big priority for me. And I remember I had a family member tell me like, man, you ain't gonna, like, you gotta work harder. Like you need to like work harder. If you're trying to be on varsity, like you need to work harder. Like you don't work hard enough and so forth, right? So I took that personal, right? Like I walked around with a chip on my shoulder. And I think this is when I know this is when the switch started to flip for me. Like this is when I started to get real serious about sports, started to get a little bit more serious about my life and the direction that I wanted it to go. So I ended up making varsity as a freshman. I don't play a bunch, but I play enough to be able to get some good film, make a couple plays, and so forth. I ended up going to a camp after the football season gets done. It's a pylon 7-on-7 camp. They had an offense and defensive line challenge. I dominated the challenge as a freshman. I get an article written about me talking about how I did at the camp and so forth from there by a Utah scout. It was a guy that was covering the region of Utah, West Coast guy. A couple days later, I was getting follows on Twitter. So I get a follow from one of the coaches from the University of Utah. And he's like, yo, I love the film. Love what you're doing and stuff. We read the article and stuff too as well. We want to get you on the phone with Coach Whittingham. Coach Whittingham is the coach at University of Utah right now. He's actually getting ready to retire. We want to talk shop. Get on the phone. They're like, hey man, like we're going to give you the offer. Okay, we want to offer you. We want to be the first offer and stuff too as well. We want to show you love, so on and so forth from there. So I'm like, damn, this is an amazing feeling. First offer as a freshman, Power 5 university. Sky's the limit. And this is when the flip switched for me, man. Like this is when I knew that like, okay, I can actually do something with this football stuff. And I think every single person in life has something that shows them a sign of like, this is the direction that you need to be walking in. And whether that's just for a season or whether that's for temporarily, like there's something in life that happens and takes place that says you need to be walking in this direction. And you either have the opportunity to pay attention to the sign or ignore the sign. And I think that is where you see the shifts in people's lives that take place to get them to where they want to get to. And for me, that was football. Like I knew right then and there when I got that offer from the University of Utah, I'm like, bam, this is what we need to be doing. We finna ride this shit till the wheels fall off. And that's what I did. So that led me to become one of the top players in the state. And not only just the state, in the country, right? I don't remember the exact numbers. I don't really care too much about the exact numbers if you guys want to check for, your reference and stuff. But I had a lot of scholarship offers. Went to a lot of the big name camps that you could think of, Under Armour All-American game, I had offers from the University of Florida, Texas A&M, USC, UCLA. It was an amazing experience because not only did I get to get around a lot of good people and have conversations with a lot of great athletes, and like a lot of people that I see and watch today on the TV and stuff, a lot of these athletes and stuff, it was like, it was amazing to be able to see the early portions of their journey, to be able to see where they are today, right? And I just feel like I was so fortunate and so blessed, man. Just a kid coming from Vegas that really didn't even know that like I can get it that far. All I knew about was just college, but I didn't know about the camps. I didn't know about the official visits. I didn't know about, you know, being able to be around some of the top players in the state. I didn't know, I mean, top players in the country and in the state. I didn't know about that stuff. So I was very fortunate to be able to be in the position that I was, and I took it and rolled with it, man. And UCLA was my fourth offer, and which is where I ultimately ended up signing into, because that's where I had the best relationship with coaching wise. It was just a dope environment to be in. I got the opportunity to play early, man, and signing there was like one of the biggest dreams coming true. And that was another reason why I decided to sign to UCLA too as well, because I knew it would give me the best opportunity to be able to get on the field early, right? So getting there, playing early, in the granddaddy of them all, around great players, around great coaches. Like, I mean, shit, it was amazing. Food was amazing. I had a great time at UCLA, being in LA. Like, man, it's just a laundry list of everything that was going on, right? And like really maturing as a young man and learning a lot about myself and having to, you know, fend for myself too as well, right? And, you know, be able to manage my money, be able to manage what I'm eating, making sure that I'm waking up on time, going out, having fun, right? Like eating good, right? You know, winning games, like, you know, we doing it all, right? So like, we wasn't the greatest. Now I'm gonna put a pin in that because we was 6-6, but we still won games. We got to the bowl game, right? So just having a good time overall, man, was something that, you know, I wish that I would have been able to experience all 4 years with being at UCLA, because that was like my dream school and where I wanted to be at. That's where I wanted to sign to. That's where I had the best relationships with, and that's where I wanted to spend the rest of my time at. But going into that offseason, man, I was dealing with that bow-leggedness and that Blount's disease, right? And I have been dealing with that pretty much my whole life. And I started having a lot more wear and tear on my knee after my first year of playing football, up there, because that workload from where I was at in high school to where I had to, you know, work at in college it was a gap in between. There was a discrepancy there, right? So like it picked up, like intensity picked up, weight room picked up, running picked up, everything picked up. And I started having a lot of knee pain in my right knee. So we go into the off season and I'm talking to the coaches and I'm telling them about everything that's going on, talking to the training staff and telling them what's going on at UCLA and the knee pain I was having. At this point, I had sat out a couple practices, missed a couple lifts. It was just telling them about everything that was going on. And they were like, okay, we're gonna get it checked out. So we go get it checked out, get it looked at, and they're telling me that it's a meniscus tear. And I'm like, okay, well, like what's the course of action for being able to get that solved? They're like, well, what we could do is we could pair up your meniscus, you know, just going for a quick operation, you should be good to go. So we were getting ready to head into winter break. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let me just get a second opinion with this, because I mean, I am bow-legged and you guys were just saying this is a meniscus tear. So I'm thinking that up until this point, I had those surgeries when I was younger. I had those surgeries and those procedures done where my doctor was doing orthopedic stuff, putting plates inside of my knee and everything. So I'm like, let me just get a second opinion from somebody that's been working on my legs outside of just right now. So they're like, all right, cool. So you get a second opinion. So I go get it looked at, get a second opinion, talk to my doctor, and I tell him exactly about what's going on. And they're like, he's like, well, I mean, like it could potentially be a meniscus tear, but then also too as well, there's a high possibility that you are starting to have a lot of those degenerative things that are going on with your knees from just the wear and tear of it just overall. It may not just be only the meniscus, like the meniscus may just be subsidiary to the fact that you are bow-legged. So he's like, I'm gonna refer you out to a doctor out in Loma Linda who works with this on a day-to-day basis. Because my doctor at the time, he was an orthopedic surgeon for pediatric, but he wasn't seeing the Blount's disease cases like every single day. Like he was doing orthopedic surgery for other things too as well, in addition to the Blount's disease cases. So he referred me out to somebody that was only focused on Blount's disease, people that were bow-legged and so forth. I talked to that doctor and we come to an agreement that, okay, we think it'd be the best idea for you to get your legs straightened out. And in order for me to get my legs straightened out, what they have to do is they have to go into my tibia, they have to go into my fibula, they have to go into my ankle, and they're gonna have to cut out bone pieces of those things and put an external fixator on my leg to be able to straighten my legs out. As I go through the different like months, there's an adjustment thing on there. So like you adjust it 10 degrees or 1 degree, whatever the case may be. I can't remember the exact degrees or whatever, but you adjust it. And as the bone is healing, as the bone is growing back, it's going to straighten out my legs. Fast forward, I decided to go through with that procedure. And I tell UCLA, like, you know, this is something that I want to do. This is where I'm kind of at with everything. Like, I'm not thinking about just right now. I'm thinking about the long haul of things too, as well. And they're like, well, okay, if you're going to get that procedure done, then you can't do any academics here. You can't do any recovery here. There's no nothing. I don't have any resources to anything. Like I'm sitting here trying to think about what did they even offer? They didn't offer anything. They didn't offer me nothing. They just said that if you're going to get this procedure done, then this is it. Like, this is, you have to sit out for X amount of time. And so my biggest thing was like, well, damn, I'm trying to get my health right. I'm trying to get ready to play back to playing football. Like, my goal is that, like, I'm going to get this procedure done and I'm going to be back for the next season. Like, I want to be able to recover with you guys. I want to be able to do my treatments. I want to be able to do, the exercises, be around the team, get my academics, make sure I'm staying on track and this stuff. What did I sign to this university for if I can't do this for all 4 years? But see, this is where the naiveness was kicking in, because I wasn't seeing the politics side of things, right? Like, as a student athlete, if you can't do anything for the university, then the university is done with you. It's as plain and simple as that, right? I have my reservations about Chip Kelly, but, you know, I feel like how do I put this? I don't hate anybody, right? But I don't like how the situation was managed. And, you know, especially with me being a highly recruited person coming into that class, for that 2017 class, I understand that he came in, we switched coaching staffs, and I understand that he came in and he went to get his guys in and so forth from there. But I was on the field. I was trying to be on the field. There would be days where I was practicing even when, like, my knee was messed up. I would go out and I would still go practice. And so, like, I was showing him that I had an interest in wanting to be with the program. But that love wasn't returning the same. And, like, man, it had came to a point to where there was an academic advisor at the university at the time that she relayed information to my family that Chip was in the office asking the academic advisor if he could use my scholarship to give it to somebody else while I was going to be down for that down period. So I have my reservations about the man, right? Because when I sat down in front of him, as I'm sitting down here face to face talking to you guys, right? Or camera to face talking to you guys, when I sat down and I talked to him about this, he said, oh, that wasn't the case, or that didn't happen. Or it was like he wanted me to stay there. Oh, like, are you sure you're thinking this through? Like, we want you to be here, and so on and so forth, right? And it didn't feel like that. Like, because if that was the case, nobody reached out to me. Nobody checked in when all this shit was going down. It wasn't until I came down and sat down and had a face-to-face conversation with him to where it was, now we want to lay everything out on the line. We want to seem like we want to be here. We want you to be here and so forth. And I think it had got to that point because I had sat down and have a conversation with the defensive line coach that was there at the time. And I think he understood my emotions, so he was relaying information to Chip, relaying information to the higher ups. And at that point, it was kind of already washed hands, because I'm like, well, shit, if you guys don't care enough to be able to help me out when it comes to recovery, making sure I'm staying on top of my things as a student athlete, then what am I, even if I do come back and I'm healthy, what purpose will this relationship even serve? Because the relationship is basically, for lack of a better term, fucked at this point. So what are we doing? Why am I coming back to this? What is the purpose for me coming back to this? So ultimately, I decided that it would be in my best decision for me just to leave. I'll leave UCLA, get the surgery done, and I'm not walking for 6 months during this time frame. All right, so they go in, they break my tibia, break my fibula, break my ankle, and I'm not walking for 6 months, man. And during that time frame, right, with that lack of walking, I ended up developing a blood clot and ended up traveling to my heart and became a pulmonary embolism too as well. And it's crazy because if it wasn't for my mom and I just deciding on a whim, like, you know what? Okay, we're going to go ahead. We're going to go do this. Okay, we need to go to the doctor's office. Like, we need to just go because something is going on. I started having this grueling pain behind the back of my kneecap. And if it wasn't for us just making a decision and just saying and just go, like, I probably wouldn't be here having this conversation with you guys right now, because pulmonary embolisms are deadly, right? So I go, end up having that pulmonary embolism, wasn't walking for 6 months. They ended up getting me on some blood thinners, but that was tough, man, because like, my life literally like flashed in front of my eyes right then and there, right? Just off of taking a chance and believing in myself and saying, you know what, like I know there's something out there that's better for me. You know, it came with a risk. It came with something that literally almost took my life. And I think mentally that was draining on me, right? Like that surgery was draining on me. It was grueling on me because I couldn't have expected what was to come and what was there, like what was happening. I ended up making a recovery, getting back into it, ended up getting on blood thinners, was going through the process trying to figure out whether or not a blood clot was hereditary, if it was something that took place because of the surgery. I'm gonna find out it was something that took place because of the surgery. That was a tough period too as well, because I was like, well, shit, if it's something that is like serious, like if it's something that like is hereditary, then I'm not gonna be able to play football because you can't play football with blood clots. To my knowledge, how it was explained to me, because you know you run the risk of if you bleed, like you're gonna bleeding out or something, right? So that was something that was tough too as well, because that was another 3-month process on top of the long process that I was already going through. So during this time, I'm trying to figure out where am I gonna go to school at? Am I gonna get picked up? Am I gonna go to JC route? Southern Utah ends up getting in contact with me and connecting with me, and I'm getting the opportunity to be able to sign there and play there. So I'm thankful for Coach Barneson, who was my head coach at Arborview, because at that time I had reached out to him and was like, Coach, like, do you think there's any possibility that like there's any way that you could help me getting back into school? You know, I'm just dealing with this right now. Like, I don't know if you know any coaches or anything like that that could potentially help me out. Ended up getting in contact with Coach DeMario DeWarren at Southern Utah, and Warren ended up offering me a scholarship, and the rest was history from there, right? So I signed in Southern Utah. I ended up coming back later in the 2019 season. I wasn't ready for the early portion of the 2019 season, but ended up coming back later in the 2019 season, and man, making a full recovery. But during that time, right, like I make a full recovery, I'm playing, but Southern Utah was the biggest culture shock for me, right? It was something that was like, man, where the hell am I at? I'm in Utah. I had never lived in Utah. I don't think up until that point, besides going to Utah to camp for football, one time I had never been to Utah. So Utah was a big culture shock for me, especially being a black man in a predominantly white area. Like, it was tough, right? And then on top of that, being in Cedar City, that was not even a major city, right? So being out there, it was just like, man, like coming from UCLA, coming from Vegas, like it was night and day, right? That was tough on me mentally. I definitely was suffering from a little, like, not even a little, but I was suffering from depression. I always try to, you know, we as humans, we always try to downplay depression, but like I was suffering from depression while I was down there, and really just trying to find myself and really trying to find joy and happiness and like why I was there and what my reason and what my purpose was for being there. I ended up, while I was down there, I ended up getting pneumonia while I was down there because of a hip, I was having a hip issue. And I was taking like an anti-inflammatory steroid for my hip, but I never got taken off of the anti-inflammatory steroid for my hip. So I was just taking it consistently every single day, and it weakened my immune system, because that's what anti-inflammatory steroids do if you're taking them for a long period of time. Weakened my immune system and made me susceptible to different things that are going on in the world, and, you know, illnesses and so forth. So it made me susceptible to pneumonia. And I had a mass that was growing in my lungs that I had no idea about. I was like having this massive pain like in my left like side. I remember like every like a couple mornings, like I'd be coughing up blood. Like I'd be texting the trainer like, yo, I'm coughing up blood. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, I'm pretty sick. Like, you know, I'd be days, like it was one day where I couldn't sleep. Like I would be trying to sleep at night, and like I couldn't sleep because the pain was hurting on my side so bad. Like, it was just bad, right? That was really like icing on the cake for me when it came to football, because I had decided that I had been given the game of football. I felt like I was giving the game of football so much, and I wasn't seeing much back in return. Like, I was actually getting like drained from, mentally and physically drained from the sport. Between the surgery, between, you know, the politics, between the sickness with the pneumonia, between more politics that I was dealing with football up there at Southern Utah, it was just time for me to put a pin in it and just say, you know what, it's no longer for me. And I always tell people that, like, as I mentioned, like how I had to figure out my freshman year when I needed to flip that switch, Southern Utah is what made me a man. it made me mature. It made me grow, because that honestly, there was a saying that I took from UCLA and it carried over with me into Southern Utah, and it has carried over with me into life today, is that discomfort truly breeds growth. And when I was at Southern Utah, that was probably the most uncomfortable I ever felt, because I never envisioned myself playing wise being there. I never envisioned myself even living there. I was working a job while I was there. I had to figure out, I had to make ends meet. So I had to work a job. I was working a job, but while I was working a job, I found a passion for helping people. And I also found a passion for, I was working with youth, and I was also working with disabled like adults. And that was something that I would do like in the off season while I wasn't playing. And it made me see a different way of life. Being in Utah made me see a different way of life, and made me open up my eyes to like, see like, okay, man, there's so much more out there, so many different ways to go about helping, and so many different people that need help, and, you know, being a mentor, and, you know, being someone that someone could connect with and relate to people on different levels. And that was something that was really, really dope, and made me into who I am today. And really a primary reason is making me into who I am today. So I always reflect back on Utah, and like I kind of get a little emotional about thinking about it, because I was so uncomfortable, but it really, really made me who I am today. I met some really good people. One of my best friends to this day is someone that I met at Southern Utah. And like, it was, I don't even know. It was just a good place to be. A good place to be. Looking back in hindsight now, and I'm just thankful for the opportunity to be able to be there. I had one more year left of eligibility on the table, and I decided, I was like, you know what, man, like this ain't for me. So I decided to retire, right? And it was about me going home and finding myself, figuring out what I wanted to do. I ended up graduating from college, from Southern Utah, and it was just figuring out what I wanted to do. Who do I want to be? Like, what mark do I want to leave? Like, you know, what's next for me outside of this football stuff? Because like for my whole life, it had been football. That's all it was football. That's what my life centered around since I was 6 years old. So it was really about me coming home and figuring out what I wanted to do. I was overweight. I fluctuated in weight. I was 315 at my highest in college at UCLA. Then I went down because I was a surgery. Then I had to get back up. I had got up to 290 when I was going through my sophomore season at Southern Utah. And then I got up to 305, which was technically my junior/senior season because we had COVID. I had got back up to 305. And then when it was all said and done, I was back up to 310 after the whole pneumonia situation and so forth. So I had to lose all that weight. Right? Like, I wasn't finna keep all that weight on me. So I needed to lose that weight. I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. And I needed to figure out what the next steps was for me for life. The best option for me at the time was being able to go through the police department. That's where I have a lot of family that was in the police department. I decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I started picking up, you know, just working out, because I knew that it was going to be important for me to be able to be in shape. I was already working out in college, but I needed to be in a different level of shape to be able to be in the police department. Like, so I started picking up running, started like programming my workouts and stuff for myself, because I didn't have any money, so I wasn't about to hire a trainer or anything. So I started programming my workouts for myself and just getting myself prepared to be able to go through the police department. I ended up getting disqualified from the police department because I have a color deficiency in my eyes. I've always struggled, date back all the way back to that elementary school, I always struggled with colors, but I didn't know that it was a color deficiency. And a week before the academy was supposed to start, they DQ me. They say, you know what, like, I'm taking this test, and the lady, I'm looking at this book, and she's like, can you see the numbers? And I'm like, bro, I cannot see the numbers. So they're like, yeah, you know what, like, yeah, we just can't take you onto the academy because that's a problem. So I'm like, well, shit. I was doing security, HOA security, and I had been basically just priming myself for going through the department, writing reports, like, you know, that was my thing. I was doing that for a year. And I only had applied to one department because that was the department that I wanted to be at. So I'm like, I'm just gonna apply to this department. This is where I'm gonna be at. I didn't apply to no other departments. The process probably would have went a little bit faster if I applied to other departments, but just one. What's next? So then I'm like, I'm not about to keep doing security. Security wasn't the move for me. I had been doing that for a year, and I'm just like, I'm not about to keep doing this. I ended up going and working at Penske, the trucking company. Pay raise, different role. I worked there for 6 months, and I decided that like, this is not for me. Working in corporate America is not for me. And this is where, you know, connections and knowing people and, you know, just strengthening relationships really come into play, because the friend that I mentioned, my best friend to this day that I met at Southern Utah, is the reason why I'm a trainer today. Between him and my girlfriend, they gave me that extra push helped me create structure, to be able to jump out on my own and say that, you know what, this is something that like I can do. I'm capable of running my own business. I'm capable of helping people. I'm capable of teaching people the things that I've learned throughout my journey, and getting people to where they need to be at. Because throughout that time frame, right, that year that I was going through, like I cut my weight down tremendously. Even now to this day, as a trainer, I've continued to cut my weight down tremendously, to be a walking billboard, to be able to show people that if I can do it, so can you. Also, not just only be a walking billboard, but continue to educate myself as a trainer and knowing the things that I'm prescribing to my clients on a day-to-day basis. Not just telling them something that just because it worked for me, that I'm expecting it to work for you, because that's not always gonna be the case. If my client has one arm and I got two arms, my client that has one arm is not going to be physically capable to do the same things that I do. So I've continued to educate myself, get myself certified as a personal trainer, and be the representation for the field that needs to be represented. So that's how I got to where I am today. And I've been through a lot, man. You know, I've been through a lot. And I think that, you know, between from all the way to, you know, that kid that got that rock thrown in his head to where I am today, like every single thing, man, like every single thing, I'm trying not to get choked up. Every single thing has its reasons. Every single thing serves its purpose. You may not understand it when it's going on. Why is this shit happening to me? Why me? Like, why nobody else and so forth? But every single thing has its purpose, bro. There was many a days, man, when I look back on it, like I was going through it. I really, really was. And I had to stop feeling sorry for myself. I had to get real about what was happening. I had to get real about, like, this is my life. I control it. Like, nobody's controlling it for me. Like, you know, your mama can't save you. Daddy can't save you. Like, you gotta stop. You can't keep blaming people for the shit in the position that you want to be in, right? So like, I had to start taking control, man. And like, I'm not saying I'm perfect, by no means necessary. You know, I have my days too, but like, man, I really relish in the field of taking control of what is going on in my day-to-day. I relish in the field of taking action on what's going on in my day-to-day, and just being a better person, right? Being 1% better than I was yesterday, being 1% better today than I was yesterday, right? And just continue to have a growth mindset, and knowing that like good things take time, man. Like I think that there's none of this. There's none of me sitting here having this conversation. There's none of, you know, me being able to help people reach their goals. There's none of that without the shit that took place. Like, there really is none of it. So I had to go through those things, right? And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for every single thing that has happened up until this point. I'm grateful for my relationships that I'm fostered. I didn't talk much about my significant other in this video, but I'm grateful for her and like the position that she's been in, to be able to just help me and guide me and, you know, just nurture me and like, you know, just really just make sure that I continue to have a good head on my shoulders, right? And continue to make sure that I'm, you know, keeping the main thing, which is helping and getting people to where they need to be at. If you take anything from this story, right, I just want you to take the importance of perseverance. Take the importance of the way of life and how things go, and knowing that like shit is not always gonna work the way that you want it to work. Shit is not always gonna go as planned. It's not gonna always be peaches and cream, but I promise you, if you keep, we're gonna talk about God here because that's what I believe in, right? I'm not sure what you guys believe in, but if you keep God in the forefront of everything, you keep your faith in the forefront of everything, and you just stay down, man, and keep working, set a goal and start putting some action behind it, I promise you're gonna be exactly where you wanna be at. Yeah, man, I'm thankful. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this journey. This is something that I've been wanting to do, something that I've done little dips and dabbles with, but I just think it's time. I think you guys know what I can do for you. I think you guys know how I can help. So I just think that it's just time to give a little bit of shit about me. I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace out.